The Shadow Home Secretary thinks that we need to up our game. Have a listen.
There are 9 million working age adults who are not working. And as we compete globally with countries like, South Korea, China, India, we need a work ethic. We need everybody to be making a contribution. We are in, as George Osborne said years ago, we are in a global race. And that means we've got to be competitive, and it means we've got to work hard. And I think as a country, we need to lift our game. We need to up our game.
Now, whilst the government accused Chris Philp of having a real brass neck and disagreed with the language that he used, ministers have been on a campaign to get Britain working since the election. 9 million people are economically inactive. A quarter of those are students, but 3 million are out of work due to health issues. So do you think it is as simple as having no work ethic? Do get your calls in this now. Nelufar, what's your thoughts?
I just think it's so rich coming from a man who got sacked from one job and resigned from another, and whose entire party was roundly sacked by the British public at the last general election. I think he's got absolutely nothing to say. So as a political speaking point, as a political tool, I get it, right? He's got to say something in his ineptitude. But if we walk past the kind of the brass neck of it, and talk about specifically when it comes to are British workers lazy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The majority of the people that you described are either studying. These numbers are really interesting to look at anyway. So what they're trying to say is that anyone over 16 is of working age, irrespective of whether they're sick, irrespective of whether they're carers, irrespective of whether they are parents who look after their own children. And many millions of those are over 50s who can't work for various reasons. I think lumping everyone in with this is a great bat to, hit British workers over the head with, but it doesn't achieve anything. No solutions are being offered here. This is just a way to score political points. I find it really, I just can't take it seriously.
I mean, the term economically inactive has been pretty criticised over the last couple of years because, as Nelufar says, sometimes there's good reason for someone not being economically active.
Yeah, for sure. Look, with all of these things, you have to put it into context and say there will be people who are challenged because of ill health, or maybe they work for a dying industry and the opportunities are not there and they are struggling to find somewhere that suits their qualifications, although there's no reason why they can't take other work in the meantime. But I would absolutely disagree with the notion that we are a nation that wants to work and get up. There is, of course, a massive number of people in this country who work really hard, particularly the self-employed, who will crawl on their hands and knees to get to work, because if they don't work, they don't earn. Their business depends on them being there and other people depend on them. But equally, I am absolutely of the view that we have bred, particularly post-pandemic, as there been an attempt to normalise the working day and working life, that there are those who have optimise that situation and have become lazy, entitled, are resisting the opportunity to...
Through COVID?
Well,
through the furlough scheme?
COVID enabled people to work from home for a start. And I think that has been a massively negative thing for the work ethic in this country. I'm not talking about people who can do flexible working, because certainly people that need to make the school run, it's miles better than when I was bringing up kids, or people are caring for other members of their family and they need some flexibility. But this absolute, resolute, defiant approach to work, look at Whitehall, about only 20% of the desks are occupied. Look at the unions who strike and then still want to strike again. Look at the railway workers, the rail workers. And I think what has happened is that we have inculcated a culture of work being a nasty word. And I think we absolutely have to smash that. We have to show ourselves to be a dynamic economy, that we are a can-do nation that want to embrace work.
The numbers have suggested that we are less... we're more reluctant to go to work post-pandemic, but do you think that is just down to furlough, that's down to our laziness?
I don't think that's... honestly, Storm, genuinely, there's a difference between productivity and working hours, and that's just something that we haven't kind of explored yet. It's
But
a really
even the
important
number
point.
of people on
But
sick leave or long-term sick leave
we
has
just had a
increased since
pandemic which
COVID.
caused a lot of people to become ill. The ramifications of that on the mental health, the physical health, and the number of people who need to now become carers is innumerable. After that, we've been teetering on the edge of recession for years and years and years. People have been losing work left, right, and centre. So to assume that this is down to laziness, I think, is just so judgmental. One thing that's really important it's really important to differentiate between productivity and worked hours. Nations like Japan, okay, people love talking about the Japanese because they have, they work some of the longest hours known to mankind, but they are not productive. Just because you work a lot of hours doesn't mean you're productive. I agree with you, Angela, if you were saying that productivity needs to increase, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying that somehow there's some sort of malaise, that there's some sort of issue with young people or with working age people, when actually we know the majority of them aren't in work either because they're sick or because they're carers or because they're students. I mean, the numbers don't lie.
Also, is there a relationship with the length of the waiting lists in the NHS? I mean, we have an increase of people on sick leave. We also have an increase in number of people waiting to get hip operations, knee operations, cancer treatment, all sorts of things, and then maybe criticising those that can't go to work because they are in fact sick.
Well, I was very careful in prefacing what I said by saying there are those for whom
But is that
concrete
the answer
challenges
to why those numbers have
No,
gone up?
I think it is multifactorial. If you have a broken kneecap and you cannot do the job that you used to do because it involved you standing for hours, then obviously, and that's why some of it is anecdotal, but equally, I'm going to repeat the point because I use the point of self-employed people. I've been self-employed for years. I know plenty of people that work within this industry. Whether you are running the local shop or whether you're running a huge business, the fact is that when you know that if you don't work, you don't earn, you do it. Whereas if you know your gold-plated pension and your weekly salary and all the other things will be netted, even if you're there or not, makes a massive difference to the work ethic. And I think post-COVID, for all those things that you've said, this country has been through challenges throughout history. You know, we've recovered from wars, we've recovered from all sorts of things. Never, I think, has the work ethic been so lousy.
All right, let's go to the phones. 0207 862 2222 is the number for your thoughts on this. Are Brits lazy is what we're asking. Tony from Rhondda, what's your thoughts? Are we lazy?
Well, I just think the question is wrong, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, by asking the question, there's an assumption there's a problem. I don't see a problem. 29 million British people get up every day, go to work. They work nights, they work afternoons, they work days. When I was a child, they never worked on a Sunday in retail. They work on Sundays, they work on Boxing Days, they work continental shifts, 12-hour days. What are people on about? We got the worst working conditions in Western Europe. I worked as a carpenter. I worked as a board director of a 400-employee company. I worked 80 hours a week. I've been on PAYE, and I had my own company for 10 years. But I think for anybody to merely suggest that British workers are lazy, whether you work in management or you're a manual worker or anything else, I just think you've got the cheek. Let's reverse this. I used to report to shareholders. Let's talk about bad shareholders we want to before we talk about bad workers.
Well, okay. Listen, shareholders, they might be counted as workers too. We could be asking whether they're lazy. But Tony, you're a very glass half full kind of guy. I can tell already. But when you're saying, where is there a problem? Well, we have an increase in unemployment. So there is one problem. We have an increase in people on long-term sick leave. There is another problem, Tony. So we're asking whether these people who are unemployed or on long-term sick leave or economically inactive, if you want to define it by that, are in fact lazy or whether they have real reasons not to be able to get into work.
Whatever you got, when you've got unemployment, it's like a conveyor belt. There are people always going to be unemployed because it's not the fault of the worker if directors like me in the past has had to make people redundant. Okay. Then they go on the conveyor belt, they're unemployed. 6 months later, they're back in a job.
Yes, but
that's
Tony,
what it's there for.
Tony, respectfully, I would just say quickly, that also if you make it easier for people not to work than work, you're obviously somebody with an incredible work ethic and you've known people like that. And I salute all the people like that. There are plenty of people like that. But if you get onto a cycle of welfare dependency, or if we over-medicalise things what are literally just the difficult aspects of life and lump those in with people who have severe mental illness and depression, then you can create a get-out-of-jail card in terms of work.
All right, Tony, thank you for your call. Vera from Nottinghamshire, what's your view when it comes to Brits being lazy? Do you think Chris Philp has a point?
No, he doesn't. I do not think what he's saying. British are bone idle, and they've been like it for donkey's years.
That's what
I've got a couple of girls that visit next door. They've been on the dole for God knows how long. And I said to one of them, why don't you see if you can get yourself a job? She turned around and said, I've got a bad back. And then her mum asked her to move a washing machine out. So she's got a bad back. Why is she moving a washing machine?
I can't answer that question, Vera. I don't know what specifically is wrong with her back, but it is, Vera, granted, highly suspicious.
A lot of people that's on the dole are making out they've got illnesses. 9 times out of 10 they haven't.
Okay.
Now, me, myself,
hold on,
if you
Vera,
remember when
Nelufar's got her hand up.
Always. Okay. Sorry, Vera. This is true. We can talk about, the people that you know and how they live, and maybe if they're kind of playing the benefit system. But the number of people who play the benefit system are in the single digits. So of all the recipients of benefits, like, for example, pensions or child benefit or child tax credit if you've got children, the number of people who abuse that are in the single digits. And that fluctuates up and down, but it's very few people you're worried about. Laziness, this idea that the British public are somehow lazy, unwilling to work, which is kind of the argument here, is do you know what's lazy? What's lazy is when your shareholders are being threatened, so you decide to make a bunch of people redundant rather than reduce your CEO pay. That's lazy.
No, that's
British businesses are as responsible for the culture they create as anyone else. If you're saying to me that benefits are more easier to get on and easier to live on than getting a job, well, who creates jobs? It's their responsibility to make it far more appealing.
That's business.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
I don't think Vera's actually saying that. Well, you said they were bone idle, but
yes.
If you are better sitting at home on benefits than going out to work, that's maybe just smart, if that is indeed your accusation.
If work's not paying, it's not paying, and it doesn't.
Vera, thank you very much for your call. James from Inverness, are we lazy?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hello.
James, I can hear you. This is starting to get like one of those very awkward conversations.
Hello.
James, are they lazy up in Inverness?
No, they are not.
Tell me why.
I'll give you 2 examples. One, my daughter, she works full-time as a nurse, 4 days on, 4 days off, and then she works in a care home. I've told her that she's doing too much, and she just turned around and said, well, Dad, it's your fault. You taught us if we want the good things in life, we have to work for it. I want my fancy house, I want my car, I want my holidays, so I am working for it.
And I trust that you will absolutely get it, James. But you're going to give me 2 examples, but let me just step in here because that's 2 examples in a country of what, 65 million?
70 million.
70 million now. And the 2 examples I'm sure are absolutely fair and true. But as a country, our unemployment has gone up, particularly since COVID, and the number of people in long-term sick has gone up. The number of people economically inactive is high, particularly young people out of work, training or education. What's that saying to us?
The thing is, I'm saying that is mismanagement by the government. Okay. They put up the costs of employing people to the employers. Also, the people that are working are having to do far too much to earn a decent standard of living.
Much like your daughter,
So
working as a full-time nurse should be able to get her the house that she wants and a lifestyle that she's comfortable with. James, thank you very much for your call. Claire from London, what do you think? Do you think that we're lazy?
Yes, I do. Actually, just come off of job seekers. And I'm quite lazy and I don't want to find a job. But I've come off it because you only get 6 months. And in that whole 6 months, not one person asked me about what jobs I was looking for, even though technically they're supposed to stop your money if you're not looking for work.
So you
They didn't ask me about
you
it.
didn't look for work in that whole 6 months?
No, it was great. I had my feet up. I walked into them every 2 weeks and told them, just had a chat with them really, and then came back out again.
Claire,
Yeah.
Claire, I don't know if you're taking the mick or not. I'm assuming
No,
you're not.
no, I'm
I was just
serious.
looking down going, does that say comedian?
Yeah, no,
Is
no,
that-
Claire. Look, you know what? I admire you for your candour, but I just want to ask you: do you not sort of miss the dignity and the buzz and the routine and the enjoying feeling tired when you come back at the end of the day? Because you know, it's great that you can indulge yourself for a certain amount of time, but we are losing the work ethic. And would you say you lost your work ethic, or it was just easier?
I think I've lost. Honestly, as someone who burnt out because I worked too hard earlier on in my life.
Ah, okay.
I have lost my work ethic, and actually, I know I'm laughing and making a joke about it, but actually, it's not good, and I'm not in a happy place. I'm bored. I could sit and scroll for hours. I could flick on the TV for hours, but it's so mind-numbing boring.
So, Claire, what I'm hearing is that you were in a job that you gave everything of yourself to, more than you should have, that it burnt you out to the point where you are now suffering in ways that you're having to deal with. And so the reason that you are calling and saying that, you know, I didn't want to look for work and no one made me, is because you were absolutely
that's called
pushed through.
psychology. That
No,
if you don't like your job,
I want to
change your
understand.
job.
She was burnt out. There's a difference between being burnt out and not being on the dole for the whole of her life.
Nelufar, Claire, you go.
As someone with a good work ethic, and yes, I burnt out because I was working too hard, too loyal perhaps, so I burnt out. But when I stopped working, nobody tried to help me get another job.
Why did you get back into work then, Claire? Because you said you've stopped now, haven't you? You said you've gone back to work.
Oh, well, I could carry on signing on. I can't remember. I don't know what it's called, but after job seekers, you sign on to something else that I haven't, because I want to push myself to get
There you go. So you're not lazy.
No, I think
Right.
Claire's making the point that it's easy to ride the system if you want.
Claire, I hear your point that actually the system is broken, that nobody is asking these people out of work whether they are looking for work. But fabulously interesting perspective,
Yeah,
Claire.
we love
Thank
Claire.
you very much for the call. I'm only ending it because I need to get to this break.